Canada's richest families don't need reality shows or red carpets. They own the companies behind your breakfast, your bank account, and your Wi-Fi. Here are the 7 richest families in Canada that basically own the entire country. Buckle up, because they are the real power players. 1. The Thomsons, the silent billionaire kings. First on our list are the Thomsons, Canada's richest family, and somehow also the least interested in talking about it. Think of them as the ultra-private billionaires who made it to the top of the mountain, then quietly built a privacy hedge around it. The family's origin story kicks off with Roy Thomson, a Toronto barber's son who figured out in the 1930s that local radio stations and small-town newspapers were gold mines, just without the shovels. Roy didn't just buy media outlets, he collected them. By the time the 1950s rolled around, he had built a print empire that stretched from Ontario to London, eventually landing him the title Lord Thomson of Fleet, because apparently Canada has barons now. However, the real money move came when his son, Kenneth, decided to stop betting on ink and start betting on data. He took the family business and morphed it into a global information machine called Thomson Reuters, a company that now handles the kind of financial and legal data that makes Wall Street purr. Today, their crown jewel is managed through Woodbridge, a private holding company so low profile it might as well be operating out of a hollowed-out volcano. Through it, they control a massive stake in Thomson Reuters, the Globe and Mail, and even a chunk of Bell Canada. Interestingly enough, David Thomson, who's the current head of the family, has been called the world's richest introvert, a man who reportedly walks everywhere in worn sneakers despite having a net worth of over $11 billion. He is rarely photographed, which in billionaire terms basically makes him a unicorn. In short, the Thomsons are absurdly rich, absurdly private, and very happy staying that way. While the rest of the world is chasing headlines, the Thomsons are busy owning the outlets that print them. 2. The Westons, from bread to billion-dollar supermarkets. Now, let's talk about the Westons, a family that somehow controls half of your shopping list and still manages to fly under the radar. The Westons started with bread, but then bought the entire bakery. And apparently, that wasn't enough, so they went on to buy the whole supermarket. Then, they also bought the pharmacy you walk into when you realize you forgot toothpaste. Subtle? Not really. Effective? Absolutely. The story kicks off in the late 1800s when George Weston, a Toronto bred guy with a decent mustache and a lot of ambition, opened his own bakery. From there, the family just kept stacking wins. Fast forward a century, and the Westons had built Loblaw Companies, the country's biggest grocery chain, complete with store brands like President's Choice and No Name, which, ironically, became household names. And just when you thought they'd peaked with groceries, they scooped up Shoppers Drug Mart, giving them a front-row seat to your prescriptions, your late-night chocolate cravings, and your impulse buys at checkout. For a while, they even dabbled in luxury retail, owning Holt Renfrew, Selfridges, and a few other places where a jacket costs as much as your rent, before selling off the fashion side in 2021 to refocus on the basics. Now run publicly by Galen G. Weston, the guy who pops up in his own commercials like a Canadian Jeff Bezos with better hair, the family still controls a massive empire through George Weston Limited, their private holding firm. Behind the scenes, they pull a lot of strings. And when they're not running the aisles of your life, they're giving back through philanthropy, dropping serious checks on healthcare, education, and the arts. Long story short, the Westons don't just feed the country, they quietly own the pantry, the fridge, and most of aisle 5. 3. The Desmarais family, power, politics, and paper trails. If old money had a playbook, the Desmarais family would have helped write it, probably while sipping espresso in a boardroom and casually reshuffling Canada's financial future. Their empire begins with Paul Desmarais Sr., a Sudbury lawyer turned business magician who took over his family's struggling bus company in the 1950s. But instead of just fixing buses, he decided to buy the holding company that owned them, and then turned that into Power Corporation of Canada, which, despite sounding like a villainous Marvel entity, is one of the most quietly influential firms in the country. Through Power Corp, the Desmarais family built a money tree with roots in Great West Lifeco, IGM Financial, and more recently, a stake in Wealthsimple, because even old money likes a slick investing app. Their style? Buy big, stay silent, and avoid unnecessary headlines. You know, Canadian finesse. But here's where it gets really dynasty level. The family has ties to nearly every big name in Canadian politics. Paul Sr. was tight with Pierre Trudeau, Brian Mulroney, and Paul Martin, basically the political equivalent of having the cheat codes to the country. And his son, André Desmarais, married the daughter of former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, because why leave networking to chance? Now, in its third generation, the family still holds the reins, still avoids the spotlight, and still shapes how money moves in Canada, all while maintaining a straight face and an elite art collection. The Desmarais aren't flashy, but really strategic. And in a country that runs more on quiet influence than open confrontation, that's exactly how you stay on top. 4. The Bronfmans. Whiskey, Hollywood, and billion-dollar lessons. Every old money list needs one wildcard family. The one with fortunes made in whiskey, lost in Hollywood, and somehow still standing. That's the Bronfmans. Equal parts brilliance, boldness, and the phrase, "What were they thinking?" It all started with Samuel Bronfman, who saw an opportunity in the 1920s that others might have missed: prohibition in the US. While Americans were busy outlawing alcohol, Samuel was busy exporting Canadian whiskey to anyone with a truck and a loose interpretation of legality. It was technically legal in Canada, and technically none of his business what happened after the border. Result? Seagram, a booming liquor empire with aging barrels and zero chill. By the time the dust settled, Seagram had become one of the world's largest producers of booze, with brands like Crown Royal and Chivas Regal turning the Bronfmans into Canada's unofficial Gatsby clan. Lavish parties, political connections, you name it, they had it. And then came an interesting twist. In the 90s, third-generation heir Edgar Bronfman Jr. decided whiskey was too boring and bet the house on Hollywood. He sold off the family's liquor business to buy MCA, Universal Studios, and a dream that movies would make more money than alcohol. Spoiler, they didn't. The entertainment venture flopped, the Seagram empire unraveled, and billions evaporated faster than a spilled shot of bourbon. Still, the Bronfmans remain absurdly rich. Because when you start with that much capital, you'd have to try really hard to lose it all. They've rebalanced their portfolio across real estate, tech, and finance, and stayed heavily involved in philanthropy, especially in education, the arts, and Jewish communities worldwide. The Bronfmans are proof that old money isn't always careful money, but when it works big. And even when it crashes, the name still carries weight, and probably a hangover as well. 5. The Saputos. From cheese wheels to billion-dollar deals. If the Bronfmans are the drama kings of Canadian wealth, the Saputos are the opposite. No feuds or Hollywood detours, just a quietly massive cheese empire that started with $500 and a bicycle. In 1954, Lino Saputo Sr., a Sicilian cheesemaker, landed in Montreal with not much more than old-world skills and the immigrant hustle. He and his family started selling fresh mozzarella and ricotta to the city's Italian community, biking deliveries across town like dairy ninjas. And while others were chasing fast money, the Saputos focused on one thing: making better cheese than anyone else. And spoiler alert, they actually did. Under Lino Jr., the family took things up a notch. They didn't just scale, they devoured the market. Through a series of acquisitions, Saputo Inc. vacuumed up smaller dairies across Canada, then expanded into the US, Argentina, Australia, and the UK. Today, they're one of the top 10 dairy producers in the world, moving more milk than most people drink in a decade. And yes, they've stayed largely private, family-controlled, and scandal-free, which in billionaire circles is almost as rare as dairy-free cheese that actually tastes good. But sticking to business only was apparently not fun enough for them, as the Saputos have poured millions into healthcare and sports as well, including their name being literally plastered across Saputo Stadium, which is home to Montreal Football Club. Well, nothing says legacy like getting your name on a place where thousands of people scream every weekend. In a world of flashy IPOs and tech billionaire drama, the Saputos prove that sometimes the old-school formula still works. Make something people want, make it well, and keep the receipts. 6. The McCains, fry kings of the frozen aisle. You'd see families getting rich selling financial data or pharmaceuticals, but the McCains, they got rich selling frozen French fries, and lots of them, like global market leader amounts. Which just goes to show, never underestimate a potato with a vision. It all started in 1957 in Florenceville, New Brunswick, a town that, if we're being honest, isn't exactly screaming future headquarters of a global food empire. But brothers Harrison and Wallace McCain saw something in frozen food that others didn't: convenience. They bet big on freezing technology, focused on the humble French fry, and launched McCain Foods. The idea was simple: restaurant-quality fries you could make at home. The execution, pretty much flawless. Within a few decades, McCain had gone from small-town side hustle to the world's largest producer of frozen potatoes, shipping to over 160 countries. That's a lot of fries and a lot of freezer space. Of course, no dynasty is drama-free. A messy power struggle between the brothers in the 90s nearly torched the family's legacy. But after the dust settled, the business stayed intact and, most importantly, private. That's right. No shareholders breathing down their necks, no quarterly investor calls, just long-term strategy and potatoes. Lots of potatoes. Beyond fries, the McCains have stayed committed to their home province, employing thousands and donating generously to rural infrastructure, education, and healthcare. In New Brunswick, McCain isn't just a brand. It's an institution. So, yes, they built a global empire on something you eat between bites of a burger, but they did it smart, they did it fast, and they're still doing it quietly, one crispy crinkle cut at a time. 7. The Irvings, East Coast empire builders. If the Westons own your groceries and the Thomsons own your newsfeed, the Irving family owns, well, everything else east of Quebec. At least that's how it feels in New Brunswick, where the Irvings are less a business family and more a regional superpower. Their triumph story began with K.C. Irving, a frugal, laser-focused businessman born in 1899. His philosophy was pretty straightforward. If you sell gas, why not own the oil, and the refinery, and the trucks, and the paper on which the gas station receipts are printed? This, my friends, is called vertical integration, and K.C. turned it into an art form. The Irving Empire eventually split into 3 branches. Arthur Irving runs Irving Oil, which operates Canada's largest refinery and over 900 gas stations. J.K. Irving oversees J.D. Irving Limited, a conglomerate with its fingers in forestry, shipbuilding, paper, agriculture, and pretty much any sector that involves heavy machinery and resource extraction. A third branch used to own almost every English-language newspaper in New Brunswick, because apparently controlling an entire province's economy wasn't quite enough. Together, the Irvings are the largest private employer in Atlantic Canada, the biggest landowners in the region, and possibly the only family in North America that can build your house, supply the lumber, print your local paper, fuel your car, and sell you the boat to leave town. Naturally, that level of dominance hasn't come without criticism, from environmental concerns to their cozy relationship with local politics. But to their credit, the family gives generously to education and healthcare across the Maritimes, making them regional giants with a philanthropic streak. In short, the Irvings made sure to build a huge economy around their empire, and they are surely not going anywhere anytime soon. And these were the 7 richest families of Canada. These people don't have to chase headlines because they're the one writing them. Which one of these billionaire Canadians impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this exclusive tour through Canada's richest families, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more interesting content.